Welcome. This is a workshop on WooCommerce theme development. My name is Zach Gordon, and you can find my site, I would encourage you to, at wp.zachgordon.com. Little WordPress.com 2012 action happened there, keeping it with the classics. And please follow me on Twitter at zgordon. Let's start with what we're going to talk about and cover in this workshop. We're going to start with talking about the one line of code that tells WooCommerce that your theme is supporting WooCommerce. Doesn't really do much other than that, but it is an important one line of code. Then we're going to get into talking about the WooCommerce template hierarchy. It sounds like most of you are already familiar with this, but we're going to take time to really look at every single file in it and get an idea for what they really do and what's in them. Then we're going to talk about the process of overriding templates, which again sounds like most of you are pretty familiar with, but we'll also introduce the issue that's kind of unique to WooCommerce as opposed to some other theme development, in that WooCommerce is going to update its template files and we will have to begin looking for changes and differences between these. Then we'll shift towards the end to getting, or about halfway through towards the end, to getting into template functions and theme hooks, which is going to be the more programmatic approach. In general, what happens with WooCommerce is you start being able to hack some files and customize some CSS. And as you move along, you get more comfortable and have to dig into programmatically changing things via the functions.php, via other plugins, or using the functions and hooks that we'll look at. I do recommend that you have some background. I think all of you go way over this, but I'll mention it anyways, because if you do not know all of the features of WooCommerce, there's going to be a point where the code won't make sense. So like, for example, if you're not as familiar with how attributes work or the different types of products, like what's a variable product versus a simple product versus one that has paid variations versus just attributes, right? If you're not familiar with this in the WordPress backend and conceptually, all of this requires different code on the front end. So it is important that you have this solid understanding of WooCommerce. If you don't, or if you have friends, I also have a course that teaches all of these basics, and there are a couple ones out there. It's not too hard, but for the theme development, it is essential we know it. We also need to understand this child theme relationship, where you have a parent theme that can be overridden by a child theme. And that will lead us into looking at, you also need to know the WordPress template hierarchy. Single.php, page.php, archives, all of these. And the reason is because there will be occasions where we have to do a little combination of creating custom WordPress themes that also pull in some WooCommerce components. And a lot of the time, WooCommerce stuff is going to be living inside of other WordPress themes. So it's not a scenario where you have your WordPress site and then you want to add e-commerce and it's a whole different thing that lives somewhere else. They're going to be integrated. And if you're just starting off, that might not be something you're familiar with. Then I would recommend knowing how to use WP hooks and your basic HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and PHP. This workshop is based on a course I did at Treehouse. If you don't know me, that's cool. You probably wouldn't have too much of a reason to unless you ended up on this site called Treehouse and you were studying WordPress. For the last about 3 years, I worked there as their WordPress teacher until literally the same week of Matt Mullenweg announcing, hey, everybody go learn JavaScript. I was told, we're not teaching WordPress anymore. Good luck with what you're doing next. So for the past 6 months now, 5 months now, I've been working nonstop on something I'll mention at the end. But it's kind of funny because last year was when this course came out. And I remember the summer before it going crazy, like, okay, now I really need to understand what every hook does. And like you go to that point of, you know this, but then you have to explain it to someone else. And so it's cool to be back here a year later, seeing that most of this content is still relevant. And for me, the reason I love Woo is very much the same reason I love WordPress, is that once you get over like 2 notches of learning curves, you learn the template structure, and then you learn how hooks work, you could build most anything with WooCommerce, and it isn't that hard to get in and to be able to customize, to streamline things. And this is personally why I love it. I don't have to do a whole lot anymore of big project build-outs. But for example, the course I'm working on now has WooCommerce installed, and I was able to do like a very simplified one-page checkout with just a few hooks and stuff like that. So this is the reason I really like it. I find it quick to get up and running with, as well as super extensible, but my experience hasn't been as much on the building out huge stuff or pulling in third parties and things like that. So let's start with the one line of code that you need to add to your theme in order to tell WooCommerce that you are supporting it. I'm going to hop in here into the best place to edit theme code, which is in the browser, in the editor right here. And I'm just going to show you, I have a custom theme that I'll be jumping back in and out of as we go on. This line here, add theme support WooCommerce, is telling WooCommerce this theme is aware that WooCommerce is running. WooCommerce will work without this, and adding this doesn't ensure that WooCommerce will work properly with your theme. All it's going to do is let WooCommerce know that your theme has this installed and it's activated. If you don't have this, so I just commented it out, I'm going to switch themes here. Sorry, there's something that's going to come in later that's messing up the error signal. Okay, we'll come back and look at this other notice later. This shouldn't be popping up right now, but we'll look at it later. The top one here is saying your theme doesn't declare WooCommerce support. And you're going to link to the integration guide, and all it's going to tell you to do is go in and put that one line of code. Again, it goes in your functions.php file, and if you're coding something custom, you probably had to add things like title tag, menu support, and all this other stuff. So if you're working with WooCommerce, again, one simple line to add. It's not going to do a lot except establish that communication. I'm curious, though, since some of you have worked with this more, this came up in the last one, does anybody know, does it do more than that? Have you heard of this line doing more than just that? Okay, then that's all it does. We're going to decide that, and we'll move on. So just like WordPress, WooCommerce has its own very structured templating system. And the first thing we'll do here is we'll begin looking at this templating system. Or it's less a templating system than it is a group of templates. These templates live inside of WooCommerce, and it's inside of a folder called templates. And what happens is when WooCommerce runs, it will look for the files here. It is also possible, which we'll look at, to override and customize these and include these in your theme, but by default, they're all going to live here. I also find another helpful place to look at this is on GitHub. So what I'd like to do now is we're going to take a little break from presenting. I'm going to walk through this template hierarchy together, and then I'll let you go on your own and just dig deeper. And if you haven't, well, let me ask this. How many of you have taken the time to not look at my code, read through and look at all of the different templates that are available? Has anybody done this before? Okay, a few people have, so you probably can agree it's very much worth the time. Let me walk through them, and then I'll give you some time to break off and explore a bit on your own. Okay, the first folder, did the authentication screen come up in the talk downstairs? Okay, so basically if you're running authentication with WooCommerce and OAuth and hooking up to other sites, or letting other sites hook up to you, you're going to see something that looks like this. So this is a full page, and it's just going to be kind of centered, and it's a quick way for authentication to work. If we come back into the template files, Super intuitive stuff here, folks. The header, what's that going to have? It's going to have all of the header code. I'll bump this up. We don't really need to see in too much depth, but just like we would expect. The footer, of course, is going to have footer code. The form login is going to have a big form with the login. And then finally, the code that's going to be help processing it, the granting access one. So that's our authentication. If you're not using authentication, then you don't need to worry about this. And I need to double check, but I know at least not too long ago, this was not shipping with WooCommerce by default. You had to add it? No, it is now. Okay, yeah, it's in there. Okay. So the next one down is going to be all of the templates that make up your cart page. We have the main cart.php file, and then a lot of these files are just going to be little components, like the totals section of the cart, or the shipping section, or what it should look like if it's empty. We also have some related things like the mini cart, which is going to be a little widget that you could appear in the sidebar. You could throw it up in the header. You could customize it and make it your own. We can come in here and see the code that's making that up. And if you've worked with WordPress templates, this is going to look very similar to what you'd see in those. The next page, the checkout, this is a little bit different in that notice we have no page called checkout.php. We do have form checkout. And what happens in WooCommerce is a lot of these pages are just one gigantic form. Picture a checkout page, picture a cart page. It's just one huge form, right? So this is what we're going to have as our master. And then within that, it'll be broken up into smaller parts. I'll mention one other important page here, the thankyou.php. Again, we're inside of our checkout. Thank you. After you place the order, the page that pops up, it doesn't say thankyou.php in the URL. It'll still say order or processed or something like that. But this is going to be the template. This is one of the hugest places I've found that it's helpful to begin immediately onboarding someone into whatever it is that you just sold them. So you have more information about the product. You have the ability to upsell next products. I'm doing a course right now, so when you get through the course and it's going to link you to a page that'll take you to here's what you need to know before you get started, that kind of stuff. So this thankyou.php page, super helpful in that regard. Emails. WooCommerce has a great ability behind the scenes that we can come in under settings and emails, and we can customize the language for all of the different emails that get sent out. But we could see the customization is not that big, although it is possible to customize actual HTML files themselves. And this is the only place in WooCommerce where you'll see that it will automatically help you override these themes. And we'll look at what this is doing in a moment. But for now, it's just good to know that if you want to, you can completely customize all of the HTML and the plain text format for all of your emails. The downside to this is you can now customize HTML emails for all the good and bad that that involves. It's not exactly the same as building stuff in the browser, so you have to make sure that you're testing it. And there are some plugins that let you easily test emails and see emails without having to send them out. So looking into something like that would be really helpful. So if you're designing one of these templates, if you don't have a plugin installed, what do you have to do to check if it works? You got to send an email every freaking time, right? And then you got to troubleshoot it and like code inspect it in your email. No. Email test plugin. I don't know. I find things just like you guys do.
I strongly recommend Litmus instead.
Litmus instead? Will they let you check stuff ahead of time?
They've got a new builder that you can build in there.
Okay, so this is a little bit different. He's pointing out one of the email testing companies. So these that'll let you build it. So basically, you'd probably be taking that and then converting what they give you into a, and that's probably not a bad idea if you really want to be customizing, is maybe start with a template that you know has been battle tested before you drop in your.
I recently found out they have a freelancer level of
Oh, nice. Desktop server, check email.
MailChimp also has inbox inspect, which might help.
Okay, I'm going to skip this for now. You can find them. I know that if you use desktop server, they do have something built in that could let you, one of their developer tools is going to be, you have to install it as an extra step, but it'll set up this nice view, and you just say, what email do I want to see, and you can test that. Is there?
One called WooCommerce email test.
Brilliant. WooCommerce email test for the win. Let's go with that one. Yeah. Great. Okay, perfect. So this is what you're going to be looking for. Again, when it comes down to testing emails, it is possible to do two things. You can customize them to an extent within WordPress or within admin, and then you can completely override them. Coming down, global. This is really important. Two of the most important files I find if you're building completely from scratch a WooCommerce theme are going to be wrapper start and wrapper end. What happens in WooCommerce is your theme exists like this. And oftentimes, WooCommerce is going to live right here. So it's going to come with its own wrapping markup right here and right here. The problem is that when you're designing the site beforehand, so again, if we're building something custom, not hacking something that exists, chances are you just designed it all flat right and you didn't expect WooCommerce to have an extra set of markup. Or what may happen is originally you were saying, I want some custom class, but what WooCommerce is spitting out is something completely different. So these wrapper files are going to be really important for you if you're starting completely from scratch. And here's what they look like. It's basically set up to work really well with any of the default WordPress themes. So what this is saying is if I have 2012, 2013, 14, 15, 16, etc., then echo out this content beforehand. Right? So that makes sense if you're dealing with 2016, but if you're not, it's automatically going to wrap all WooCommerce content in this div ID container role main, or div ID content. So if you don't want this double layer of ID wrapping, you have one of two choices. You can override this and delete everything in it and just write your own code, which is fine if you only need to code for one site, but if you need to code for potentially a whole lot of people, then you want to keep in these other options, and maybe you just duplicate it and say, I'll add my own case for this specific theme. The corresponding file at the end is wrapper end, and again, because there's two opening divs, you're going to see two closing. So if you are dealing with these issues of like something just isn't conforming right, these are the files you're going to pop into. The breadcrumb, pretty self-explanatory. The login form, the sidebar, these are just some general global things that make sense that it would go inside of this global folder. The next one down is the loop. And the loop is something we're very familiar with in WordPress, right? While have posts, then do the following. This is a little bit different. This is referring to everything that gets included inside of the loop on a main shop page. So let me switch over to 2015, or do you have any preferences? Let's do 2016. Keep it fresh. Anybody seen 2017 yet? I was about to make up some crazy rumors, but we're being recorded, so. I did. It's all JavaScript. API driven, written in Angular with Backbone. It's awesome. Now I distracted myself. What was I looking at? Something in here, changing themes. Okay, we've got a right theme. We're going to come to our shop page, and I'll show you what I'm talking about with the loop. Okay. Everything that appears on the shop page inside of this little area is going to be inside of this main loop folder. So let's say I didn't want to have reviews here, or I wanted to change how the price or even the add to cart button works. When I come in, look at this. We've got add to cart. We've got the loop start and the end. We've got the order by, all this other stuff, our price ratings. If, one of the most common things people need to do is change like what the input field looks like or the price, and this is one way to do it. The next one down is, again, we're going to have some time after I go through each of these that you're going to take a few moments to explore them, so I'm just kind of going through one after another here. I find most people, when they get started with WooCommerce, they'll get comfortable customizing the shop. They'll get comfortable maybe next working with the checkout and the cart a bit, but it's so easy to create custom admin areas. The whole user interface of what it looks like when they log in, what's available to them, how it's styled, how it's formatted, how it's integrated with everything else. You have a lot of flexibility here. And I think what happens with WooCommerce sites is once you stop putting in the effort, it becomes really apparent that you're working with WooCommerce, which might be fine, but sometimes it's not what you want. And this is one of those areas. It goes buttons, notices, and then probably the account area are the disregarded things about WooCommerce customization that then make it perfectly clear. Oh, I just paid with a purple button. You got a nice WooCommerce site. I know that view cart button is going to pop up right there, the whole thing. It's pretty standard, so it works, but I'd take the time to begin to look through a lot of these options here that let you customize what's available. The other thing is that you may not want to give somebody full admin access. So coming in here and figuring out what needs to get cut off, what needs to be turned off, what needs to be removed is going to be really helpful, so you're not accidentally giving somebody this whole section that doesn't make sense. But when this is done well and some attention is paid here, you create the sexiest, most custom sites that just really feel so natural and good. Notices, there ain't much here, and you probably don't really need to customize them much. They're just error, notice, and success, and they're all the same except they have slightly different markup inside. But this is another one of those areas where it becomes pretty obvious that you're dealing with WooCommerce, and people will forget to customize these things. It's not likely that you'll probably have to customize what the actual markup is. Like, do you really need to change that it's appearing in an unordered list? Maybe you do. But it's probably going to be stylistically that you're changing things. And it's important that you take the time to do that. Next down, we have order. And unlike the thank you page, which comes after you process your order, and it could show you the review, and it could actually pull in some of the review of details and things like that, this is going to be the stuff that is reviewing your order. So if you wanted to deal with tracking, order detail for a specific item, all of these kind of things are going to be in here. I'll do this last one and then we're almost done. Single product, unlike the loop, is going to be everything that appears once we click on a specific shop page. So what we have right here, we're going to be able to find within single product. Inside of that, we have our tabs, which usually appear down below a product. We have our add to cart. Remember, I said that depending on what kind of product you're dealing with, there's going to be a different interaction happening. So for example, if we have a simple product that just lets you add one product versus we have a variable product that lets you select different attributes and it's going to change the price based on that, those are going to be two different add to cart buttons. We'll have our variation, we have our variable, simple, and if you begin adding custom other types, those templates will also be mapped into here. So this is a place where it can get kind of tricky, and what happens is like you designed your site to work for one specific product, but you maybe didn't take into account potential other ones, and then those get added and it looks kind of weird. So again, like being really clear at the beginning, what are we going to be counting on? Are we building a theme that's just to solve these solutions? Or are we building a theme that we're trying to make as widely accessible as possible? Let's go to the next step though, logically, which is going to be, now that we know where the file is and what it is that we're looking for, how do we begin to override it? This process, again, has anybody not created a child theme before? Okay, pretty simple. Let me just show you then. You're going to create a WooCommerce folder, and then you're going to copy over only the files that you need. And this is kind of an issue that people will occasionally see with WooCommerce is they want to customize it. So they copy over the entire folder of all the possible files. The problem is that now whenever WooCommerce starts updated, you've hard-coded them back into whatever version, and that's never going to get fixed. If that's your goal, go for it. I love encouraging people to do things like this. But otherwise, just get what you need, which should make sense if you've worked with this before. So if you have, well, I'll show you first, and then you could play around. I'm not going to make a child theme of 2015. I'm just going to hack it outright, just to give you an idea of how this would work. One way to do this is you can have the WooCommerce plugin on the left-hand side, and then your theme on the right. And notice we're inside of plugins, WooCommerce, and templates. And in our theme, we're inside of our theme, and we're going to make a new folder called WooCommerce. And then anything that happens inside of WooCommerce needs to map to the structure of templates. So if we want our cart.php page, we have to make a cart folder for it. If we want to change the price inside of the loop, then we would need to come in, create a loop page, and drop in the price. And now just how child themes work, the magic of it is that this will be overridden. We can come in, I can customize my price. Save that, and now when I come over,
You should use value for money.
come again?
Cheap, not cheap, value for money. Low cost. There you go.
Nailed it. Okay, so this file is inside the loop folder. So is it going to change the price here, or is it going to change the price here? It's going to change the price here, maybe. Oh, yeah, there's a little class there, so if I pop this open, I should see class price. No. I had this problem before with the cache not clearing, so I'm just going to give you guys heads up. If I do it once and it looks like it's supposed to and it's not working, we're not going to take the time to fix it. We're just gonna go on. But this is the process that you'll see. You will copy the files that you need into your folder, make sure that they're in the right structure, and then they will automatically, oh, is it because I don't have the right theme? Yeah, that's why. Let me switch to 2015. Get my shop going, pop it open, and now we should see our completely worth it price. Okay? Cool. Now, one of the problems is that this is something you don't see as much with regular WordPress themes as you do with WooCommerce. But on occasion, WooCommerce will update the template files that are coming with it. So this has happened a few times in its history and sometimes causes pretty breaking changes. So let me show you how this works. What's going to happen is if you've worked with diff tools and you're familiar with command line, like this is going to be second nature to you. If you haven't, it's a little bit different. But luckily, WooCommerce gives us some really good tools to work with this. So I'm going to try to create a scenario here where I'm going to go find a really old version of WordPress, of WooCommerce. Let's find, in the loop, I'm going to get a version of the price back from version 1.6, which was a minute ago. I'm going to come into my price here, and I'm going to drop that in, although That isn't updated. Let's find something that has. Which one's going to be outdated?
The account one,
Cart or account? Sorry, which one were you thinking?
yeah, they added tabs, so...
Yeah, except that won't it won't.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
What was the other one you were suggesting? Maybe one of the checkouts, or let's grab form checkout. Let's see when that. Okay, 2.3. Yeah, cool. Now, but that's not what we wanted. Which one was it that we grabbed? We got. Sorry, checkout, form checkout. Okay, so we'll come into WooCommerce checkout. And just pull this onto here, create a new file. And form. It's going to go in our checkout. Okay. So now when we come into WooCommerce, it has a kind of overall settings and status section that you may or may not have played with, system status. And at the very bottom of that, it will give us access to all of the custom files that we are working with. What's not happening here, this is what happened last time too. I'm going to try switching the theme and see if the warning comes up, because we just dropped in an outdated version, right? And it's not notifying it. But now, because I had the wrong theme, I'm going to see this. Your theme contains outdated copies of some WooCommerce templates. So that will pop up there. It'll also show in the system status area. And at the very bottom, look at what we've got here. Version 2.4.0 is out of date. Now, WooCommerce did not scan your code base and figure out that you have outdated code. All it did was look at this right here. So the easiest way to fix this problem, boom! That's right. Big bucks, folks. Your problems are solved. This is so bad. Just because it works in the front end, like when we get into testing WooCommerce, we got some potential big issues of payments not going through, of stuff getting messed up on the back end. So you really have got to have kind of your testing workflow figured out. Yes?
And I noticed that that whole outdated WooCommerce message doesn't come up if you override templates via plugin. So like if you do that.
Thank you. Guys, that's a really good point. You can do all of this also via a plugin, but if you do it via a plugin, Woo's not going to check your theme for it, so you're going to miss that stuff is outdated. Has anybody come across where this has actually ruined functionality in a site or caused?
Or outdated themes?
Yes, about.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I didn't think I was the only one. It's a bear, and there are a couple ways to fix this. One is if you're completely new to this sort of thing, there's something like an online diff checker where you're going to paste in one file into one side and paste in the other file to the other, and it will show you the differences between these.
I talked to a guy at the Woo conference. There's a tool called WinMerge. Will do the exact same thing. Right?
WinMerge?
WinMerge will do the exact same thing, and it'll do whole files and whole directories.
So,
Give you which one's added on which line and what's on the other file.
oh, that's gnarly looking. Oh, okay. Is this just Windows? Yeah.
On Mac, you have really
There are a lot of different resources for this. I was kind of starting at the you've never seen this before and then going up from there, but it sounds like you guys are fairly familiar. You know the stuff. Let's move on. Which one? Oh, diff checker? Yeah, online. Pretty simple one. I've used this to introduce people to it, and then, terminal and getting some others, and yeah, there's other tools. But this is not a pretty or easy process sometimes, because the stuff you're looking for, you might have deleted what was originally there in the first place that it just replaced. So my best suggestion is I don't really have one. My approach has been look for anything that seems important there, that I should maybe bring over. It's not usually like classes or things, and it's usually with some bigger updates, but there's definitely potential there, and you do need to stay aware. And my recommendation is check this. When you know that you're going to launch a WooCommerce site, know that each time a new version rolls out, you have a responsibility to circle back and make sure that nothing's broken, and then pull it into testing to fix it. Okay, so at this point, what we would do is we would practice copying something over, editing it, but based on kind of your familiarity, it sounds like we don't necessarily need to go that deep into playing around with this. So I'll just pause a second and see if there are any questions or comments up to this point of the overriding, the updating process. So I want to show you one tool in particular that I find helpful, one way to go about tracking this stuff out, and that is Query Monitor. There are a few other options around this. This is one that's been around a while, pretty solid. I like it. It does a lot of different things. It'll let you pull out a lot of information about your page and what's going on. And one of the things it will do is it will list out every single hook on the page and tell you what's hooked into it. So let's do this. Let's try to delve deeper into what's going on with this WooCommerce checkout billing. If I come in and I've turned on my Query Monitor up here on the top, I can come down to hooks. And now it's going to show me all of the hooks and everything that's hooked into them. I just did a search and replace, or a quick find. I'm going to make this bigger here. WooCommerce checkout billing. Okay. A little too small. Here we go. So what this is telling me is that, oh wait, it's not showing what's hooked into it. Yeah, okay. So this is showing the potential action or the placeholder, and then what's being plugged into it. So in this case, our WC checkout form billing function is going to be hooked into that. If we looked at WooCommerce, let's look at another one, checkout after customer details. Let's see what's going on there. We could see nothing's hooked up. So where the customer details end, nobody has added anything to add something in. These are the most common ones. Everywhere in WooCommerce, you're going to see before this, after this, before this, after this, before this, after this, anywhere. So the idea is you don't have to open up that template. You could write your code and just say, hey, throw this code in over here. That does make for some really nasty functions.php templates. So my recommendation is if you do have template code to write, create a template partial, a small file, and then load that in with your PHP rather than having this like functions.php that just became your entire custom site and all your markups in there and everything else. You want to keep that clean. But this tool is pretty great because we'll start to find some things like we've all worked with in Q scripts before. It's going to be what you hook into to load all your style sheets. And we have all of these style sheets available. WooCommerce is going to be the same thing. And in some cases, like here's our order checkout review. Notice how we have our order review set to the order of 10, and then our checkout payment is going to be 20. So the other common thing that happens in WooCommerce is you might see rating or title, rating, price, right? But you don't want that. You want price, title, rating. So what you could do then is we could do these processes of removing and then adding back in, changing the order or the priority or the placement we want to do that. So let me show you a little bit of this in action. First, let's take a look at our default setup here. Notice how we've got our sale, the image, our add to cart, the price, the sale, the review. We come in, we've got this set up here, all this, and then we've got our tabs here, right? Okay, I'm going to switch our themes. Now we've got a slightly different setup. We've got the title and information over on this side. We've got our add to cart. This still looks pretty similar. But then notice that the pictures have been rearranged. The reviews are now over here, and the ability to add reviews. Our breadcrumbs have been slightly moved around a bit. Now, in order to do this, it didn't really take too much actual customizing of the theme code. A lot of what was happening behind the scenes was just adding and removing things. So let me pull up some of the code behind the scenes here, and I want to show you the functions.php file. Because once we start working with the custom hooks and things, we're no longer working as much with these files. So if I wanted to edit a hook on my main checkout page, I would not need to copy this over. All right, if I'm not going to edit anything by physically like hacking up this template, but I do want to customize what's going on with WooCommerce checkout billing, I don't have to bring this file over. So what you may find with some more elegant WooCommerce themes is they actually have very few templates. Now this does raise a question, and I don't really have a best answer, although I have kind of my own opinion, which is if you're creating a whole bunch of custom templates, do you put those in the WooCommerce folder or do you put them in your own folder? If you put them in not the WooCommerce, then how is somebody else going to know about them? What are you naming it? What are these conventions? And there's a whole range of whole range of practices. If you go and download a lot of WooCommerce themes, you'll see some that have like full libraries that are not even in that folder. You have some that have like huge big folders that don't match at all what WooCommerce is. My kind of general feel, and it's kind of up to you, is I like to keep WooCommerce kind of how it is, and then if I'm going to be adding stuff, make it clear with naming, but kind of keep it separate. So in our functions.php, this is really common, and I like to suggest this as kind of the first step for getting comfortable with working with actions and filters, and especially actions in WooCommerce, is finding stuff you don't want and using this remove action. The way remove action works is you name the hook, what's hooked into it, and the priority of it. So if we come back again and we look in our page here and we run our hooks, okay, I was going to try to jump to it. Let's see one that we're doing. Sorry. Be the single product. Just close down the whole thing. Sorry. Notice that, okay, so inside our content we're going to have, now it's going into our single content, single product. Let me go about this another way. Sorry, what I was trying to do is find the different sections here, but there's one other thing I'll introduce. Have you guys heard of the Hooker plugin? There's a couple of these out there that are similar. HOOKR.io. You could download it. And what this does is shows you at a glance, there are a couple other ones like this, it'll show you where every single hook is. And it'll also help you figure out what is hooked into it. So, I'm sorry? It is a WordPress plugin. Yeah. Yep. And so what we do is a circle like this is showing a filter, and the little thunderbolt is showing the actions. So after template part, summary, the WooCommerce template part, thumbnails, after reviews, etc., etc., WooCommerce before single. And eventually we're going to get to one of these that has all of them before shop loop. No, that's not it. Single product summary. There we go. Okay, so, all right, single product summary has, what we've done here is originally there was a rating attached there. And we've said, go to our single product summary. I'll remove this first so that we can see it show up. And then it'll... Oh, I'm not seeing the reviews. All right. Sorry, folks. I'm going to skip over this part because it's not working, but it sounded like most of you are pretty familiar, right, with how to work with remove actions. I was hoping to show that one extra step, which is how to figure out what is hooked in where. But what's nice about most of the way this page was built is it just involved unhook this from here and plug it back in over here. Unhook this from here and plug it back in over here. The last thing I want to show you is this does not always work where it's actions and filters that are actions that are doing everything. There are some instances, for example, where we have to work with filters. So actions allow us to just easily drop in code or bulk remove it. What filters are going to do is modify something. So on the checkout page, when it comes to modifying what those different details look like of the customer details, if you check out, yep. We can't go in and we can't just say, hey, go ahead and remove action for billing details, or remove action for phone, remove action for email, remove action for this. We have to pull all of them out as one and then unset components of it. So this is working with a filter instead. And this is just to kind of show the two different parts. And one of the ways you could figure out what's going on is just to Google it. The other is searching through a tool like Hooker or something and hovering over and seeing what's being loaded where. I find in my experience, like the easiest way to go about fixing problems in WooCommerce is just by searching. Right? We're kind of in this good place with WooCommerce of like 90% of the stuff. Like you could usually figure it out. Most of the solutions that you find are going to be copy this into your functions.php, because most of the people that are posting up like solid solutions are going to show you some hook where you could easily remove something. And I encourage you, if you find these things and you're not seeing the top 5 posts, post it up there. Like some of my highest blog posts for some whack reason are just the strange things I've found in WooCommerce over the years. And I'm just like, oh, here's how you do this. And it just gets this insane traffic because it's really helpful for people trying to figure out the same thing. And I'd encourage you as you're going along to kind of do the same. We're getting to a better point with it, but there's less and less that you can't really so much figure out just by kind of searching around, especially if you're familiar with the actions and filters. I don't think we're really going to have time, but this is kind of where I would suggest going in and playing around with trying to remove things from the cart, either figuring out if it's an action and using remove action and then maybe adding it back in somewhere else, or figuring out if something is a filter, trying to get that data, modify it, and send it back. I realized, though, originally that if I tried to do all of these examples, we would have taken longer than an hour and a half. And there's nothing worse than a workshop where like 4 people get through it and half the people are lost, and you don't actually end up building something. So I want to leave you with a few resources in closing out here. Sounds like honestly most of you are pretty good with WooCommerce theme development, but I do have a course that teaches all of this Plus shows in depth how to build that entire kind of custom WooCommerce site. It goes through all the different files, most of the different possibilities, actions, and filters. And if you go to wp.zachgordon.com and look under my courses, you can sign up for free. I just encourage you to do it through my site and not directly on Treehouse, because I get a little something if you decide to hang around, which is nice after making 36 courses and you leave, you get nothing from them. So that said, that is that. I do want to plug one last other little thing, because for the past 4 or 5 months I've been working on a course called JavaScript for WordPress. I don't know if any of you have heard this, but you've definitely heard that we should all be learning JavaScript and we should all be learning the API. And this course has been my day in, day out, heart and breathing since November now. And it'll start being released at the end of this month. So it's basically just a really in-depth look at JavaScript, the whole language, looking at the different frameworks, and then getting into the API. Unfortunately, I had this idea I'd get it all released by version 4.5, which isn't going to happen now. So I'll just have the first part be dropping this month. But if you are downstairs interested in the more RESTful development and you want to begin shifting into more of this JavaScript-driven development, that's what this course is really based off of. And we're definitely seeing more and more of that out there. That said, the PHP basics, these fundamentals for a theme, sometimes they still need to be there no matter what JavaScript, no matter what RESTful stuff you're throwing out. So these are foundations that aren't going anywhere anytime soon. And I encourage you to continue to play around with them. If you haven't taken the time to look through those different files that we looked at, if you haven't taken the time to play around with actions and filters much, I also have a course that just goes into actions and filters at Treehouse. And really valuable. And if it's something you're still kind of murky on, take an afternoon and ratchet it down. It'll make sense once you get past it. And then you could really just do so much more. I feel it goes, you learn the template hierarchy, and you could do way more than anybody could before they knew it. And then you learn the hooks and filters, and you really just get deep into it. So that is it for me. I thank you all for coming. I hope you continue to rock it out with WooCommerce. And even if you already knew everything, hopefully this kind of reinforced some things. Hopefully you picked up a little something along the way. And please continue to share this information out, because we're still at a not quite great Google saturation point where there are some things that could be still better explained and put out there. Hey, thank you everyone.